I used to drive all over town for low prices, but now I let Walmart's incredible new Savings Catcher do the work for me. I just enter my Walmart receipt online and Savings Catcher does the rest. It compares the prices I paid for items at Walmart with advertised prices from other top stores in my area. And if Savings Catcher finds a lower advertised price, Walmart gives me the difference on an e-gift card. Now that's my kind of work.
Introducing Savings Catcher from Walmart. Go to walmart.com/savingscatcher for details. Eligible items only. Restrictions apply.
Blog Talk Radio.
We are the UR Tennis Network. Our mission is to be the voice of tennis. We enlist a team of passionate enthusiasts to promote our sport. We strive to bring interesting perspectives on the many spins of tennis. Our goal is to provide the learners of our sport with current news and information from many angles. We seek active participation from communities interested in tennis, but tennis is not interested in them. We are expanding our outreach. Tennis is a true lifetime sport that needs to be talked about, and the UR Tennis Network pledges to pursue this idea relentlessly.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Parenting Aces radio show on Blog Talk Radio's UR Tennis Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and today we will be having a discussion about no ad scoring and its adoption into Division I tennis for the 2014-2015 season and the implications that is going to have in the junior tennis world. So I have with us today several different college coaches. I am expecting others to call in during the course of the show, those both for and against the no ad scoring change, and I'm really hoping to provide for all of you a balanced perspective on this. Let me say before I bring the guests on the line that I do anticipate that the show may go longer than 60 minutes today. If that's the case and you are tuning in live, the podcast of the show, which will contain the entire show, will be online on ParentingAces.com/radio show later this afternoon. If you just go to ParentingAces.com and click on the radio show tab, you'll see the entire podcast. For those of you listening live, the live broadcast will end right at 60 minutes. So if we continue on past that point, I encourage you all to check out the podcast later today. Also, I want to start the show, again, before I bring my guests on the line, and I know you guys are holding, so thank you very much for being patient with me a minute. I want to start today's discussion with a quote, and those of you who follow me on Facebook know that I listen to a lot of TED Talks. That's kind of one of my guilty pleasures, and from time to time I come across some of them that are just very pertinent to the Parenting Aces community. And the one I listened to earlier, well, I guess it was last week at some point, was done by a woman by the name of Margaret Gould Stewart. Ms. Stewart works currently at Facebook, but she has also been a principal at Google and at YouTube. And her job is to see to it that users have a good experience when they're on her site. And the quote that I want to share with you really kind of struck a chord with me, and I think it will do the same for you as we move forward in today's discussion. So let me just read this to you. And I quote, "When you introduce change, you need to do it extraordinarily carefully. I have often joked that I spend almost as much time designing the introduction of change as I do the change itself. And I'm sure we can all relate to that when something that we use a lot changes and then we have to adjust." So I will leave you with that thought as I bring today's guests on the line. And our first guest that I want to bring on is Coach Chuck Creasy, who is the head men's coach at the Citadel. Chuck Creasy, are you with us?
I am, Lisa. Thanks.
Thanks. And Chuck, just so our listeners know, Chuck also hosts the show on the UR Tennis Network and talks a lot about what's going on in college tennis. So for those of you who haven't checked out his show, I encourage you to do so. But Chuck is here to help shed some light on the history of college tennis formats and scoring, and also the process by which this latest change came to be approved. And so, Chuck, I want to just give you a couple minutes to kind of give us your position before I bring the other coaches on the line.
Well, Lisa, I appreciate it, and thanks for your show and everything you do. But, this is a huge moment in not just college tennis, but maybe tennis for the whole United States. And as much as some might be for it, there are many, many also against it, because the implications are that it will trickle down and become what junior tennis is. And every time college does something, the juniors pick it up, whether it's 8-game pro sets, no ad scoring is now maybe into that, and 10-point tiebreakers, all these things, and they have serious, serious implications for the educational aspect of players and the development of those players in the United States. So it's a big, big moment, and I appreciate your quote you just read, because we better be darn careful. Everybody wants change, but you better be able to understand why you're changing, first of all. Secondly, is it a good reason to be changing? Thirdly, what are you changing to? And I would like to add the fourth thing. After we change, I would like to say we need to be able to hold folks accountable for the successes or the failures. It'll be the type of thing that bleeds for 5 to 10 years from now, and this is a big one. So I'll start with that.
Great, thank you. And now I want to bring on the line Coach Lynn Loring. And Coach Loring is the head women's coach at Indiana University and was responsible for a petition that he sent around to the women's coaches around the country. And Coach Loring, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you so much for being on. I know you are, like Coach Creasy, busy, and this is a rough time of day to ask anybody to take time out of their schedule, but thank you for being here. Can you please give our listeners, and in case some of them haven't read my article on these changes, give them just a quick rundown on the petition that you created and circulated and the outcome of that?
We're kind of talking about two different things here. The point of our petition was that we didn't feel like the coaches had been given a chance to give enough feedback on these changes before the decision was made. And I have said all along when I sent this out to the coaches that I'll play any format that a majority of our coaches want to play. Now, at this point right now, I have 172 schools on the petition, which is well over half of the schools in Women's Division I. So, but again, our petition says, please don't make these changes until we've had a chance to vote on them. And I was up front when I sent this out to people. I said, I don't especially like these, and I'm not for them, but, that's a discussion for another day, which, I'll be happy to have today. But, we just felt like we were never given the feedback, a chance to give our feedback. And basically, and again, I'm not going to even pretend like I know what's going on in the men's world. I'll leave that to Chuck. But I know in the women's world, we got a survey at the end of the experimental period. And for people that don't know, basically the month of January and first week of February this year, the women played one experimental format, which was the old college format, but we played a tiebreaker for the third set. And the men played, I believe, a tiebreaker at 5-all, both in singles and doubles and no ad scoring. And so a survey was sent out. And the women were asked, did you like the 10-point tiebreaker? And they said no. And another question was, do you think the men and women should play the same format? And I believe both the men and the women majority said yes. But it's a long jump from that to say, for the women, it's a long jump for that to say, well, the women don't like a 10-point tiebreaker, and they want to play the same thing as the men. So so they'll play no ad and 6-game sets and doubles. We were never asked if you had to choose between ad or regular, which would you pick? We were never asked, do you want 8-game pro set and doubles or 6-game pro set and doubles? We were never asked, do you want to play clinch? So our whole point was there were some very flawed conclusions made from some very limited questions that were asked. So the point of our petition is, hold off with these changes. The NCAA sports cabinet votes in early September, and they're the ones that either approve these changes or can put a hold on them. And so our whole thing is we want to get that sports cabinet to put a hold on it until there's a chance to take a proper survey.
Let me ask you a question, though, because my understanding is that this NCAA vote in September just will apply to the NCAA tournament, not necessarily dual match play. Is that? And
the thing is, Lisa, that the ITA, the coaches, the conference could decide we want to play 1 singles and 5 doubles for the whole year. I mean, a conference could play any format they want, any scoring they want, but if there's schools in that conference that think they have a shot at the NCAA tournament or winning the NCAA tournament, they're going to want to play everything the same that the NCAA tournament does. So you are correct in that the NCAA committee and the sports cabinet, only thing they have jurisdiction over is the NCAA tournament. But I think you can see, like if in basketball the NCAA tournament was going to have a shot clock, then obviously the coaches want to use the shot clock during the season. And so that's what this is all about. But you are correct. They only control the NCAA tournament.
Okay, great. And we have another caller on the line. I'm just going to see who this is. It's area code 517881. Caller, are you there?
Yes, this is Coach Gene Orlando from Michigan State. Thanks, Lisa, for taking my call.
How are you? And
great.
Thank you so much for calling in. So maybe you can share quickly your stance on all of this and why you're choosing to be with us today to talk about it.
Well, I agree with both Chuck and Lynn, and going back with Chuck and going with the shortened format. They've been trying to go with this shortened format for quite some time, and first they were trying to do it because of trying to get on TV, and then secondly they thought that the ADs were telling us that the matches were going too long. And then, thirdly, they were saying that we got to be concerned about if we don't make change, they're going to be cutting programs. And then just recently we had a meeting. They said we want this shortened format because we want to make the game exciting. And to me, I think it all boils down to the shortened format isn't going to bring more fans into the stands. I think it really comes down to the coaches being involved in the community. Doing the little things to make themselves relevant, and the more they do that, the more we're going to have people in the stands, and the reasons that the ADs want to keep us around. Going back to Lynn, I totally believe what he was saying, that we were out of the loop, and we weren't able to be a part of this decision-making process. Also in the meeting, obviously we had like a little get-together. I wouldn't say it was an official meeting, but with the ITA representatives. They were just basically trying to tell us that we needed to accept this, and the changes are made, and we're moving forward. And the process that we have certain representatives that represent each region, and they were supposed to be our representatives, and they made this vote, and they basically pushed this forward. But we've been against this change for over a year now, so it's been very obvious that they know that this was a sticky issue, and the results from the questionnaire, really show that nor the players nor the coaches were in support of the shortened version, and but they still went ahead with this process. But like Chuck was saying, I think it will have the trickle down effect, and it will affect junior tennis. And I'm just not sure what's their motive behind this. If they're trying to create just excitement, I think the excitement was already there, and when you play matches that are long, that go back and forth, it adds to the drama and adds to the excitement. But But that's my 2 cents, Lisa, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Coach. Well, I want to get back to something that Chuck mentioned, and I'm going to just put this question out there and let the three of you chime in. And it's a multi-part question, so bear with me a second. Okay, so the first part of the question is, what is the ultimate goal and the time frame to achieve that goal with this shortened format? If the goal isn't met, then what happens? Where's the accountability for this change? Who's going to be keeping track of attendance, revenue, etc., and where is that going to be reported? Has any of that been discussed to y'all's knowledge?
Lisa, that's Chuck. Can I jump in there real quick?
Please.
A first question we should have is why this fight? Why now? Gene said it best. What is the agenda? Why? I mean, those are such shallow reasons. It's not about the excitement. I mean, tennis is about drama. It's about the scoring system has been around over 100 years, and for good reason. What most people don't realize is that the game point now is there's a reason why you have to win by 2. Well, there's several things. You have to win 3 points in a row versus 1. The other thing is that it's not about leading, it's about separation. You have to call it separation because 1 point now is worth 2 games. It's the one you have and the one the other person doesn't have now. It's going to take, if you lose that on a net court or anything, it takes 2 complete games to regain that point you would have had. But irregardless, they say excitement. It's not. It's the drama of tennis is what, and it shouldn't be about randomness. Yeah, and the other things that Gene said is exactly right. So what is the agenda? The other thing is, does the ITA have the right, the moral authority, and why are they the sole people to push through such a drastic change to our beloved sport? I mean, that is unbelievable. That's a big question. Where do they have the authority from? And they'll say it's in their own constitution. Well, who made that constitution? But, that's why it has to go out to the conferences and the coaches, because I'm saying they don't and they shouldn't. They're a coaches organization. Okay. Number 2, how did they push this through? It started in 2012, the history, Lisa. 2012, we had a circus-like atmosphere, obviously, at the 2012 NCAA. 32 teams there, 16 men, 16 women. And apparently NCAA officials came back and said, wow, we got to do something about this. But this was sort of the crisis, I believe, that the ITA has used to try to say, hey, listen, it's too long. That was met with 10,000 signatures on, what's that website? 2 kids from Michigan put it together. And at 10,000 signatures against, they tabled it, and then they came back this last year at the ITA convention where we had the infamous 21-19 vote. On the men's side, it was 21-19. Lynn, as she already said, the women voted to play 2 regular sets, tiebreaker at third, which that was on their side of things. The men's side, we voted 21 coaches voted to play regular scoring, but to accept the experiment with stopping sets after 5-5 or tiebreaker at 5-5. And then the other part of it was a complete no-ad thing, which was 19. This format they used all spring, 6 weeks this spring, was never discussed. All right, then on top of that, Lisa, Mitchell Frank actually had his own website, his own Facebook thing. He got 1,348 signatures against it. It's been met with, even if you don't have those, the right thing to do is to shoot for a 2/3 majority with those people who are involved. We need a 2/3 majority minimum to even, if we don't have a 2/3 majority, there should be no discussion to change to something that's so drastic, And then the benefits, the pluses or the minuses of no ad are the third question. But even if it was the best thing ever, we should be asking why now, and then what is the agenda that they have? Do they have the authority? And the way that they did it was just not right, and it's that simple, But and I feel very selfish right now because Lynn is on there, but Randy Blumendahl, who is the men's coach there, is suffering a lot right now. His mother passed away 2 days ago, and she had nothing wrong with her, and it's just a horrible thing. And John Roddick's father passed away too. I just wanted to make sure before we got too deep into this, I said something for all the people. Please have those families in your prayers, everybody out there.
Thanks,
so,
Chuck.
Yeah.
We have another caller on the line. Let me just check and see who this is. It's a caller from area code 269381. Are you there?
Hi, Lisa. It's Colette. How are you?
Hey, great. How are you? It's Colette Lewis from Zoo Tennis. In case people don't recognize your voice, thank you so much for calling in. Colette just got done with Kalamazoo. She lives there, but she was on site every day. And I know, Colette, you had an opportunity to talk to several of the college coaches as well as several of the players, the junior players who are looking toward playing college tennis. And anything you can share from those conversations would be really fantastic.
Well, I do also want to echo what Chuck just said, as Randy and John, Randy Blumenthal and John Roddick were two of the coaches I talked to with Chuck, as well as Gene Orlando. I spoke with Michael Senna. I spoke with Peter Smith, Billy Pate, who's the chairman of the men's committee on this particular issue. I talked to Ty Tucker of Ohio State. Again, I'll just reaffirm that not all the coaches are for this by any means. I do think that there is some fatigue over this 2 years plus now of insistence that change is necessary. But if I could just pass along kind of my thoughts as a college tennis journalist as to why I will no longer be covering Division I tennis if it goes to no ad. I think I'll just take a short time to do that.
Please.
I fell in love with college tennis. I can tell you exactly when it was and where it was in College Station with UCLA and Baylor playing for the team championships. It was a fantastic match. UCLA came back from 3-1 down, and it just I had never had that much exposure to college tennis at that time, so I was just captivated by it. I was actually there mainly to cover the individual tournament, seeing it as an extension of the work that I had started with juniors. But then I was like, wow, this is so great. This is so exciting. It's so tense. It's so dramatic. It was just everything to me. So ever since, and that was, by the way, the last tournament that the men and the women played at separate sites during the NCAA finals. The following year, in 2006, they were put together, and that's when we got the 32 teams at one site. Which as a journalist has been fantastic for me. But as everyone knows, it's a very, very long few days to start because there are so many teams on site and so many matches to play. And many of them are very good matches, and so they take a while to decide. I just really don't like no ad. I have seen no ad a great many times in my junior coverage because it's played in the doubles, and I just feel that it's not the essence of tennis. It's not what tennis, what makes the game of tennis, as Chuck said, so ultimately tense and dramatic. I think last week we had an example of that when Marin Cilic and Roger Federer were playing a game that took 19 minutes, and Cilic saved 6 match points. And for me, that kind of thing is what makes tennis the sport it is. It's also Last year's women's final was decided by a similar game when Kyle McPhillips played a 7-deuce game, I believe it was, saved break points at 5-3 in the third set, and eventually clinched the match in that game for her team, a national championship. That, to me, that kind of excitement will be, there's no question about it, it will be gone. That kind of tension and drama is gone from the sport when NOAD is introduced. So I, who fund my own travel and all of my expenses, really am not interested in covering that part of tennis. There are alternatives, and they include junior tennis, which right now at the ITF level, the USTA level, is played with regular scoring. The ITF, as I said, plays NOAD in the doubles, but not all the Grand Slams play NOAD in doubles. So I am just not interested in the game, and I also do think it will give an excuse to the top players who really are eager to go out on the pro tour to bypass college, which I think is really sad, because almost every player I've ever seen could benefit from at least a year or two of the college experience. So I don't want to dominate the conversation anymore, but I just thought I would pass along what my thoughts on the subject and my decision on why it won't work for me.
Thank you, Colette. And again, for my listeners that haven't had a chance to read Colette's article that includes quotes from several of the players at Kalamazoo, there's a link to that on ParentingAces.com in the comments section of my latest post, and there's a link directly to Colette's article. I urge you to read that, because it's interesting to hear from the kids too. And Colette, thank you for calling in. I know you must be totally exhausted after your week at Kalamazoo, and thank you again for the incredible coverage that you give that tournament. And let me sit in front of my desk and just check Twitter all day long and know exactly what was going on. So thank you. We have another caller on the line. I'm going to bring them on. Area code 410-455. Are you there?
Yes. Hello, Lisa. It's Rob Hubbard. How are you?
Hey, Rob. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. I hope Colette's still on. Let me. First of all, I'm with Chuck and some of the others. I'm not necessarily for the changes, but we got to be careful a little bit here. Chuck remembers back. We had about a decade of NOAD already in college tennis, and I was one who went to school, and I got to college not knowing that it was even NOAD, and I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here in that really I came out of 4 years of college playing NOAD and not feeling like I never had the feeling I didn't play legitimate tennis. It is legitimate tennis. It's different. It's for whatever, I'm not sure why NOAD was put in place originally back then, back in the 70s, and again it was around for a decade, and Chuck probably has the dates better than me, but I can say that when I got to college and I heard it was NOAD, I was like Colette, and I said, "Oh my God, change! This is horrible." And I guess it kind of goes back to your original statement about change being extraordinarily careful. But for whatever reason, NOAD was already in place then, and I quickly came to find out it was a little bit of an adjustment. But when I came out of college, I actually felt like when I went back to regular scoring that I played deuce points and add points a little better. I didn't feel like I'd been shortchanged because of NOAD. The driving force behind this, there's only one agenda for this. It's like Gene alluded to. It's not going to put more stands in the more fans in the stands. It's that's going to be the coaches getting out into the community, like he said, and getting a closer connection and continuing to work that. But we don't have a lack of fans because they don't understand the scoring. It's for whatever reason, whether tennis isn't the booming thing on television. We can take this all many different directions. If it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So it's not on like basketball and football and baseball. So, or golf. Every weekend you can turn TV on and you've got those sports at your hands. So the bottom line is the no ad and the comment that Colette made that said, well, kids won't go to college. I'm sorry. Billy Martin, Jimmy Connors, Johnny Mack, John Sadri, they went, they played no ad. Connors and Martin and Mack were in school 1 year. Sadri went 4. And they played no ad. And so there can be benefits. I felt there was a benefit to my game. But ultimately, I tell you, the biggest thing I'm concerned about is how they're going after the doubles. If they're playing no ad for singles, I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but they're continuing to shorten the doubles, which really changes that. And then ultimately, the coaches aren't getting a say in this. Like Lynn was alluding to there, is that we're not getting a chance to vote. But in light of the latest ruling with the NCAA, where they're allowing the Big Five to do what they want, that's why it's not going to happen anyway. They're not really interested in the coaches' vote, because we all sat in on regional meetings last fall, and I can't say I heard many people at all interested in change at those regional meetings. But it's known that the bigger schools are going to be driving this, and their network television. We're not talking about regular TV. We're talking about network television, and these schools or conferences want program or want sports that can fit within a certain time period on their program. And those sports that might not fit on that then might become an expense. They'll be marked for elimination if they can't fit in on the programming. This isn't normal TV that we're talking about. So it's being driven by some of the higher ups, the bigger schools, and a couple of bigger ADs are driving this. It's involving network TV. Word is, if we're not going to accept it, then our sport can be, set up for elimination, because it's not going to fit within the context of their programming. I think there's been enough catastrophe, enough decimation of the men's tennis for certain, and to see this continue on would be a problem. But there's the no ad itself. I don't think is an alarming thing that people should be so upset about. I'd love to hear what Chuck has to say, because Chuck was coaching at Clemson when I was playing, and got to play against him a couple times, and really over the 4 years with the no ad, I really didn't come out after 4 years of college tennis thinking that I'd been shortchanged. I was resistant, just like most people are, to change, but I'm also not happy with where tennis is headed, and it seems like doubles is really the big thing on the chopping block right now.
Thanks, Rob.
Colette, this is Lynn. Do you mind if I jump in here for a minute?
Sure.
A couple things. Number one, and again, these are my opinions. I'm going to wear a different hat now. My other hat was the person who got this petition going because I didn't feel the coaches were properly surveyed. Now I'm going to wear the hat as the coach at Indiana University. I'm an old guy like Chuck, and I coached during the no ad period. And, speaking for the women, number one, if the reason for this is to save time, it does not save time in women's tennis. The 6-2 set is now a 6-4 set, so you're playing 2 extra games. So the games are shorter, but the sets aren't shorter, and there's way more split sets in no ad than there's regular scoring. So I'm not going to profess to know a thing about men, but for the women, it didn't save time. The men went to the no-let because of the cheating, and you have to remember that only the Big Five conferences have an umpire in every chair, and they never call the far sideline. So I think you're going to see a horrendous amount of calls with no ad, and all the other conferences that have 2 roving umpires, I really think it's going to be a nightmare. But again, the women play let, so but I think that's going to be an issue. I think this whole thing's being driven by the USTA because they said at the board meeting at the convention last year that there's more kids playing junior lacrosse than junior tennis. And I think their thought is if they can make college tennis more exciting, they'll get more kids playing junior tennis. I think it's kind of backwards. I think the more kids we get playing junior tennis, the more kids that'll follow college tennis. But so anyway, I think the engine driving this is really the USTA. And my last comment, I thought the release put out by the ITA at least sent to all I guess it was sent to all the coaches, which I thought, was very misleading because it did drop names like McEnroe and all the pros that played in the no-ad era. And it alluded to, because they played no-ad, they learned how to handle pressure points, and that's why they became such successful pros. But what they didn't mention was back in those days, there was no 20-hour limit when you're in season. There was no 8-hour-a-week limit when you're out of season. There was no play date limit. Now we have our 25 play dates. Back then, teams were playing 35 and 40 play dates. So those are, and the doubles was 2 out of 3 sets. So they were playing a lot of doubles, 2 out of 3 sets. There was no hourly practice limit, and there's no competition limit. So I contend that that's why McEnroe and those players, came out of college tennis in such good shape. It had nothing to do with no-ad.
Interesting point. We have Coach Peter Smith from USC on the line, and I want to just give him a chance to chime in as well. Peter, are you there?
Yes.
Hey, thanks for calling in. Yeah.
Sure. I haven't been listening to the show. I've actually just stepped out of a meeting, so I heard. Is that Steve Denton talking? And then I heard Lynn talking now.
It was Rob Hubbard beforehand. But,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Okay,
I was trying to figure it out.
Peter, share your thoughts with us, because I know the statement released by ITA, you are one of the supporters of the change, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I feel like we have to do something. Coming from a coach who had their program eliminated, a long time ago when I was a coach at Long Beach State, and it was a cost-cutting thing back then. And, all this that happened last week with the NCAA, I certainly knew about these changes that were coming. I feel like on the men's side, we're getting picked off one by one. And, is this going to save college tennis? No, I don't think this is going to save college tennis, but I really think this is a step in the right direction. And really, since I started coaching 27, 28 years ago, we have been talking about formats. I tried simultaneous format 25 years ago when I was a coach at Long Beach State, and didn't like it then. I played no-ad scoring and loved no-ad scoring. I mean, back then it just wasn't a political issue. We did no-ad scoring in high school, and I went to college and did no-ad scoring, and no one ever discussed it or even thought about it. So I enjoyed it then. So to me, it just doesn't seem to be as big a deal as it's being made up to be. But my experience last year in the indoors was such a positive one with this. I didn't like the tiebreakers at 5-all. So now it's at 6-all. I like that. And to me, we played 2 great matches in the semis and the finals. Both were under 3 hours. Both had everything. I went to the other matches, and watched them. When we hosted the SEC Pac-12 Challenge here at USD, I watched the matches. I wanted to feel it from the crowd. I talked to people in the crowd, and everybody loved it. At indoors, I talked to people that have been watching college tennis for over 20 years, and the one comment to me from I'm not going to say his name, but a lot of people in college tennis knows him because he watches so much and he supports a lot of programs. He said, Peter, I've endured college tennis for over 20 years, and now with this format, I can enjoy it. And I really believed what he said, because I was feeling the same thing. And, talking to Larry Scott, our Pac-12 commissioner, he said, I said, look, we're playing these great matches. They're under 3 hours. He goes, that's it. That's the slot, Peter. That's right in the home zone that we need to have.
And Peter, let me ask you, so from what you're saying, it sounds like the ultimate goal is to shorten the matches, to get more fans? Is that
we need to find ways to make our sport more relevant, or we're going to go away. We really are. It might not feel like a crisis yet, but it's going to be.
How is this going to be evaluated? Who's responsible for evaluating and reporting the results of the evaluation, and for how long is this going to be allowed to continue, before somebody says, yes, it's working, or no, it's not working?
Well, to me, I don't look at this as a test. I mean, obviously, if it goes terribly wrong, I would think it would be reevaluated. But, I felt like our testing was last year. And I felt like, I saw all the surveys. I saw all the times. I don't have them in front of me. But to me, when we were using no ad, again, I focus on the men because we tried no ad. The women didn't. There was a huge time saved. Huge time. I felt it. I mean, we played Baylor last year at our place. It was a 4.5-hour match. And my wife texted me the 3-hour mark and said, I have to leave. And I just chuckled inside. I said, all right, my family can't make it through the match. Ding, 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 we got a problem here. The match lasted 4.5 hours. It was a great match. And I shook Matt's hand, and, it was a very hot day at USC, and I just said, nobody's going to watch 4.5 hours. No one. And, we both kind of chuckled. It was a great match, but it was just too damn long.
But here's my question. Nobody's going to watch 4.5 hours. I get it. That is long. Is anybody going to watch 3 hours? I mean,
well,
how many people have to watch it?
Well, I'm not, I don't have that answer. And talking to Larry Scott, he said keeping it under 3 hours is the magic number. I think as the world gets faster, that number will shrink. But I know every sport is looking at this. Golf is looking at it. Every single sport is finding ways to make it quicker. I mean, we talked about not sitting down on the changeover. A lot of this stuff, we went into it, and I thought it was going to be awful. Like the no warm-up, I was like, this is crazy. Why would we want to do this? And you know what? I loved it. I couldn't believe I loved it. And most college coaches that I talked to felt the exact same way. So I see a lot of benefits out of this. Is it the cure-all? No. Do we have to do a lot more? Yes. But to me, I see it as a step in the right direction.
Lisa?
Yes. Chuck.
Can I jump in? Yeah, this is Chuck. First of all, Rob and Peter, I used your vest fishing yesterday. I really appreciated it. Peter gave me
usually when someone gives you a nice thing.
So I was thinking about you, man. I was fishing a little bit. But listen, the best thing is, look, these discussions we're having, everybody has a right to have these discussions, and we should have these discussions. We have never had these discussions to any great length. I've got my notes out here. I've got 8 things I'd like to say. I'm going to try to say 2 or 3. With Peter, we can respect each other and do that. But let's say no ad is the best thing ever. The point is that we didn't have these discussions. And secondly, again, it's not how you do it. It's not what you're doing sometimes. It's how you're doing it. In this situation, though, I wanted to chime in here. I was around when we started No Ad. No Ad was passed with 36 people in the room when the ITA dues was $10 per person, and it was supposed to be an experimental thing for 1 year or 2 years. And to answer the question about who's going to be accountable if this thing really does bomb, is that nobody will, because it went on for about 13 years. In the end, the president of the USTA at that time, David Markin, came in and he said, this is just not a rule of tennis. It was good for some players, Peter maybe, and a player like Brian Shelton told me it was good for him. Even a Jay Berger said it wasn't bad for him. Reason being, for players who are more laid back or passive, it did put pressure on them. And, hey, listen, I better get my rear end to the net on this point and this point, or else you get. We used to say either you deal on or you get dealt upon with no ad scoring. If you don't deal on, you get dealt upon. A player like a Mitchell Frank, players who construct points, I've seen players buried with this. It's, again, I will never be convinced that it's overall a good thing. Players never learn how to play 3 points in a row, which is the essence of tennis. If you don't win the first point of the game, you have to win 3 in a row or 4 out of 5. In no ad, you only have to learn how to win 1 point in a row. And, again, it's not about leading. It's about separation that makes the difference. But let me just finish, my thought with this. Look, easy to pick up, easy to put down. Hard to pick up is hard to put down. Excellence will always breed participation. Participation and popularity will not breed excellence. That's where we're missing the boat, and it comes down to an ideology of whether or not we're entertainers or educators. Ideally, we would like to be both, Lisa and everybody. We would like to be educate our players and entertain as well. I think baseball does this, maybe football and basketball, I think, some of the sports. Right now in tennis, we're not educating the players because they don't get to play enough, and the entertainment, obviously, is not where we want. So the point being is, what's number 2 if you can't get education and entertainment together? Do you go for education first, and maybe you won't get entertainment? Golf does this. Golf, nobody's been, I bet most of you have never been to a college golf match, but we continue to put players out on the PGA Tour, and college golf is extremely viable. Whereas if we go for entertainment first, then what have we got in the end? Well, we have some entertaining matches. Well, look, there are 30 sports, guys, on some campuses, 36 actually on some. We are fighting against 36 sports with people who, if we put out pizzas and a reason to come, they're going to come, but they're not going to run down there and say, oh, boy, let's go down and watch the tennis match. It's no ad scoring. I heard it's no ad scoring. That's just not going to happen. So the point is, if we have to do something, we should do something that has such potential for a drastic liability. And I can go into that for a long time because I saw it all, the players that did not develop into that they should have. Lots of players were buried. The Mitchell Frank top players were buried because of no ad scoring. And we should not take that risk for so little payoff. What's the payoff? Oh, we're going to have a match under 3 hours? Oh, well, right, but it has no educational value, and guess what? Nobody understands it, and guess what? We just instilled it also in junior tennis, and now, as we dumb down the scoring system, we've also dumbed down one of the most fantastic games ever invented, and believe me, the sport will suffer at the junior level as well. So, I mean, those are many, many things. And just, look, lastly, Title IX is the culprit. We all know why sports have been dropped. Title IX, right. In 1991 and 92, everything was dumbed down by the NCAA to 20 hours a week, 8 hours practice in the fall week. Give me a break. I mean, what is that? And in 25 matches, tennis players, it's about at-bats and reps. And it's true, when people say, look, these players got better in the 80s, they were playing 120, 130 matches a year, and college tennis was just one part of the puzzle of being able to do many, many things. And the dumbing down will not breed excellence. Excellence will breed participation, though.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thanks.
Anybody else want to chime in here?
Yeah, I'll piggyback a little bit off what Rob said. I mean, I think if we could get on TV, and this is, from brainstorming with Chuck and Randy when we get together, but if we could have like 2 seasons, a fall season and a spring season, the fall season would be more individuals, and we could set up the All-Americans and the national indoors and our regionals and set them up as like Grand Slams. I mean, we could put on a Friday night, the video on TV, the semis or the singles and semis or the doubles, and kind of be like a weekend where everyone knows, hey, tennis is on this weekend, and they can watch it. And then maybe we have a little bit of a different format. We can have regular scoring during that time, and then in the spring season, it is just dual matches. And if we have to keep the matches shorter, then maybe we do singles first and still keep our regular scoring, and maybe doubles takes a little bit of a hit. So I think we got to get creative and think a little bit out of the box, and changing the scoring format I don't think is the answer, and at least people are trying to do something, but I think that's where they need all of us collectively to help with this decision. It isn't just a certain group. I think we got enough experience and great coaches out there that can really come up with a lot of different ideas that can really push our game forward, and I just feel like, I think the ITA committee has been pressured and under the gun, and they had to come up with something. But I think we just got to, take a step back, count to 10, and let's really figure out what's going to be best for us, because it is a very important time on the college game, and I think it's important that we make the right decisions here.
That's a great point, and I think one of the things that we all agree on is we want to see the sport survive and we want to see it thrive. And I don't think anybody is saying don't make any changes. And I think it's very important to restate that point. We all see the crisis in front of us, and we understand that something needs to be done. But again, it goes back to the process, and as you just said, I mean, you guys are, you have decades of experience behind you as players and as coaches. You all should be at the table collaborating on ideas and working together to come up with a plan that benefits all of these players coming up through the system. And again, taking care to introduce the change in such a way that it makes sense, and to make sure that there is accountability, that there is a clear goal that you're trying to achieve with any change that's being made, and that there's a way to analyze whether the change is getting you closer to the goal. And from the outside looking in, I don't see that any of that has happened with this particular change of no ad scoring.
It hasn't, Lisa. It hasn't.
Lisa, I would disagree completely. I mean, I've heard this from other coaches, and I've been in so many meetings, and these are general membership meetings, that, this was talked about, and to the point where a lot of people were saying, can we talk about something else? Again, years and years, I think of a lot of coaches didn't understand. I know Chuck's not one of those coaches that, hey, this is coming down the pike. Hey, I need to fly to Florida to the coaches convention. I need to be at the meeting in Athens. But I feel like it was, and I kind of scratch my head when a lot of coaches say that.
So Peter,
if I can inject a second there, is that Peter said something earlier. His administrator said the magic number is 3 hours. Where did that number come from and why? Okay, it's network TV that they want to be able to fit in programming. Maybe it leads to spectators live, but like Chuck said, it's not going to do it. Okay, but the bottom line is that this is being driven. They don't want our votes. They don't care the coaches' votes. The administrators again, you get the Big Five conference, the autonomy that they're getting. This is just a little bit of a trickle down. Is that some ADs are driving this change, and the magic number is 3 hours because they want it for network programming. Okay, and that's the bottom line. So it doesn't matter what mid-conferences like my school, UMBC, or any of the other the mid-level, and we're not one of the Big Five, and they don't care. And they have their magic number is 3 hours for programming. That's where they need us to go. Okay, and they're not going to whether the coaches vote unanimously to keep regular scoring, they don't want it. for whatever for the network programming or whatever reason they have for that magic number of 3 hours. Again, I've played no ad. I personally didn't feel it was a bad experience after 4 years. I'm more worried about the continued shortening of doubles. I think that has because there have been some really drastic proposals about doubles. But I think now we're getting down to one set. I think 8 games at no ad would have been sufficient. But the bottom line is the coaches. There are a lot of coaches that are they're just like us, that we want this discussion, but the powers that be don't want the discussions.
Right. Look, it's real simple too, guys. But you can have a TV format, football, basketball. You can have a TV format, but in our conference, for example, it will never come down to a TV match for us.
Right.
And the point being is that you can have a TV format, and I don't think anybody would be bothered if you just say, hey, this is the TV format, but keep the game itself, for the player development. For 90% of people, it's not about entertainment. It is about education, so we're barking up the wrong tree there, and it's how we barked up that tree, guys. It's not about what we're doing, it's how they did it, and we basically, fine, let those administrators come and sit down and meet with us, but don't just do this and say, listen, you got to take it and you got to like it, and all this discourse does not mean that, hey, that we go forward anyway, because there'll be some big fallout, long time.
Well, the format that the administrators came up with had no doubles in it. Basically,
one of them,
doubles.
yeah, that's right. One of them had
and
no
that
doubles.
I'm telling you, that was a fight. The biggest discussion on this whole thing really was going from 8-game pro set to a 6-game pro set, or a 6-game regular set in doubles. And, I felt like sometimes you have an 8-game pro set. I know, Chuck, you're going to jump at me through the phone, but it went too long. And so we'd have a great crowd for the doubles. You'd have 500 people for the doubles. And, the doubles would last an hour, and then singles would start at, an hour and 15 minutes, and everybody would leave. So
Peter, that format's better than the other one. But that singles first is better if you're going to have a TV format. The thing that they're pushing through, it makes no sense.
I felt like with this one, we were playing a tiebreaker at 7-all, and now we're playing a tiebreaker at 6-all. It wasn't that big of a difference for me. And again, when we played UCLA, the doubles lasted 40 minutes. So, I felt like that was a good amount of time. But yeah, I do think we need to get together, and we need to do more, and we got to push this forward, because really, to me, I'm looking at tennis in the United States, and it's in trouble. How many pro tournaments have we lost? We've lost a lot of pro tournaments.
From 75 to 14, Peter. From 75 to 14 now left.
But see, Chuck, that's why I'm not afraid of change. I realize we're in trouble. We got to do something different. Is this the right answer in the end? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. But I know what we're doing is not working.
Peter, can you put on? Peter, can you put on?
We're getting on a couple different subjects there.
Wait, excuse me one second, guys. Peter, can you put on your tennis parent hat for a second?
Yeah, I saw that question, and that's such a weird question. I know what you're going to ask is, how do I feel like no ad is in the juniors? I'm not copping out here, but I hadn't thought of it in that way. When I was on this steering committee, I thought what was the best for college tennis, and I don't know what's the best for junior tennis, and that's a weird thing to say. Okay, now we're impacting junior tennis this way. I understand we're leaders, and have an influence on junior tennis, but that's
that's a tough one, I got to say.
But I was told by USTA that whatever college tennis does will happen in the juniors. It may not be immediate, but it will come. And so, you like me have a son playing junior tennis. I mean, from the parent standpoint, I would hate to think that my son's going to travel to these tournaments and play no ad scoring. That makes me crazy to think that that's what's coming.
I'm sorry. Why are we even giving any credibility to the USTA? How many things have they done right? How many things have they said are going to come true? I mean, I don't think that junior development has a clue what they're doing. So, and that's a whole other topic when you're talking about saving tennis, or we're talking about college tennis, and why college tennis is being pushed to 3 hours. They're two different subjects. If you want to improve tennis, if we're going to talk about tennis overall, put pro tennis back on television on the weekends. If it's out of sight, it's out of mind. There's the start for tennis. But for college tennis, the magic number is 3 hours, according to administrators, ADs, that want this shortened for network TV. So USTA, how many of us have been involved with that where we just said USTA doesn't know what they're doing or don't know what they're saying? And they're not.
But they are at the table in these conversations.
Interesting.
Look, my quick question would be, TV is not done for fun. It's done for money. And there's a reason why pro tournaments aren't on TV anymore on weekends. We could want to, but it has down ratings is what it's all about. Are we sitting here thinking the mistake we made in tennis, of course, we promote the stars instead of the sport. Golf lives on because they promote the sport more than the stars. In pro tennis, we don't have enough American stars for the ratings to go up right now. So college, we might get live streaming, we might get it here and there, but if it's a bomb rating-wise, it's not about. And again, just have a TV format, and that's all that you would have to do. Last thing is, everybody is speaking out this time tremendously against it, because when they passed this back in 79 or 80, whenever it was, as an experiment for a year or two, nobody knew the repercussions. Everybody now, we're talking Lisa, you as a tennis mother, and everybody who has had experience with it are saying, whoa, what was that? And with abbreviated formats, the kids never learn the rite of passage. They never earn the rite of passage that they need to have to really lock in their confidence to go to a high level. When you have an abbreviated format, the kids win and they don't really get their confidence, and they lose, it doesn't really hurt enough for them to go do the work to either quit or recommit. That's very, very important. Kids only go forward when they win a 7-5 in the third, a 6-4 in the third, a 3 in the third. And they used to go forward when they won a tough 2 out of 3 set doubles tournament, and they were there on the last days. Our kids are not advancing because they do not have the rites of passage that for the educational value of tennis.
Well, it's a tough call, and I feel like, y'all can say what you want about USTA. They are at the table, and if our junior system is impacted here, and I have no reason to believe it won't be, given what came in 2014 from USTA and junior competition, then all we're doing is reducing the number of kids that are playing in the junior level, which then reduces the number of kids that are going to play at the collegiate level, and we haven't even touched on the scholarship issue for college. I mean, I'm now resigned to the fact that my son probably will not get any scholarship money his first year of college, and maybe not his second year. So that was a tough pill to swallow as a parent who has spent, I'm sure, well into the 6 figures on my child's tennis development over the last 10 years. But everything affects everything else. And so this is, where I get so confused. I just don't understand how bastardizing the scoring format of the game helps get more people in the seats, helps generate revenue, helps grow the industry, helps grow the game? Nobody's able to answer that question, and that leads me to believe that people are just grasping at straws here and really have no idea what the hell they're doing.
And who's going to be accountable? That's what I want to know 5 years from now. If it bombs worse, will people sign an affidavit that said, we screwed up United States tennis? I mean, that's what I'd like to see, possibly. You know, look, Title IX was a great, very good rule, very poorly implemented. Everybody would agree to that. It was never meant, even the women, Lynn, would agree, it was never meant to take out 400 men's sports. But in the end, athletic directors have to decide about money, and they can't support everything. And the big mistake was never taking football out of the equation when you divvied up the proportionality. If football would have been taken out of the equation, men and women pretty much would have been treated the same way. But when they cut everything the men were doing in half, it was never meant to do that. It was meant for my daughter and your daughters. It was meant for USA daughters. The tragedy of Title IX is mostly we have international young ladies benefiting even before our American girls, and then forget about the American boys. They're just really getting butchered. So what are parents going to do? They're not going to spend $50,000 a year getting training for kids, and then, wait a minute, there's nowhere for my kid to go. He's fifth in the state, and he can't even go to a college to play. So we need to talk about these issues, and it's not about people being against Title IX. We needed that. We needed that implementation. It's not against foreign players. We need a structure where we only have 2 per team. Everybody knows that. But the ITA was never willing to take this on, where junior college did. That's a huge thing that we are all guilty for not demanding. It's not for Matt. It's for not taking these issues serious enough to really do this 15, 20 years ago, and now we were seeing the fruit of the labor or the non-labor.
But let's get back to the question at hand, Chuck, which is this latest change and what is it that ITA is trying to achieve here, and who is responsible for saying whether or not they met the goal, and who is accountable if they didn't meet the goal for saying, oops, this isn't working, we need to do something else. And that's the overwhelming question in my mind that nobody seems to be able to answer.
We'd all like to know that.
Right, and the bottom line is tennis is never going to be a revenue-producing sport in college. It's just not. First of all, there's no charge to attend a college match. It's free. And what few schools do sell concessions, I'm guessing they, at best, are breaking even on concession sales. They're not even making money there. So I don't buy that it's about getting more fans in the seats. I don't buy that it's about TV contracts. I don't know what it's about, but nobody has been willing to step up and say, this is the reason why we're making these changes. That's what I want to know.
I think at best there's some agenda we don't know. At very worst, it's some agenda we don't know. At very best, it might be to try to make up for the 400 teams. I mean, you're saying we have 400 teams dropped. I mean, I don't know either, and they need to come clean with that one, because nobody buys into it's about, hey, 3 hours. It's about just shortening everything.
Well, I would like to put the challenge out to the ITA and to the USTA, and yes, even to the NCAA, to come out with a public statement about the purpose for making these changes and what the changes, how they're going to judge the effectiveness of the changes, what the time frame is, and what the exit strategy is if the changes don't meet that goal. So I'm going to just put that challenge out there. I'm hoping somebody from ITA, USTA, NCAA is listening and will take up the challenge and come through for us. I think it's the least they can do, and it's owed to these student athletes who lay it all on the line. All right. That said, we have run well over our time. I want to thank all of you guys for tuning in today, for calling in. Coaches, I know y'all are crazy busy. It's back to school time, and you've got a lot on your plate. Thank you for all you do. I am so looking forward to being a more integral part of college tennis next year, hopefully keeping fingers and toes crossed when my son's playing someplace in this country. I hope, and I just want to say I really appreciate the willingness that all of you have to speak out on behalf of our sport, and I know we all have the best interests of tennis and of these kids at the forefront. Thank you for tuning in. Everybody else, have a great week. We are actually going to be tackling more about college, but on the recruiting side next week, so I hope you'll tune in again. And then the following 2 weeks, I'll be broadcasting from the U.S. Open. So we've got a great few weeks coming up. Coaches, once again, thank you so much for your time. Have a great week, everybody.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.